And she said, when you were 3 years old, he molested you. And they rushed me to the hospital and told my mom, you know, if she makes it, she's probably gonna be an invalid, you know, she won't be able to talk, she won't be able to walk, you know, she won't do any of these things. So I'm like, I'm 16 years old with cancer, and told my mom, they had told my mother.
Cervical cancer, I believe.
Cervical cancer. And I remember telling my mom that if I didn't have the surgery, I was gonna die, and even if I had the surgery, I still may die. Because most women don't survive cervical cancer, especially the way mine was.
Welcome to Empower Her. It's your girl and your host, Nana. Remember, this is a show we educate to elevate and aspire to inspire. Today, I have with me Miss Jacqueline Moore. She's a founder of a domestic abuse NGO, an author of a book called Abuse Not Broken, I'm Still Standing, and the host of a gospel show called Testimonies and Praise that airs on Roku. I am more than excited to be interviewing this wonderful woman. Good afternoon, Mrs. Jacqueline Moore.
Oh, beautiful. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. So the funny thing is, we literally just discussed how we've known each other via social media for 3 years, and it's our first time meeting.
It's crazy.
And like throughout the 3 years, I've been wanting you on my show. Like I always have new ideas, but whatever idea I have, I'm like, I have to have this woman, period, because she has to be talking. Your story is magnificent. So being here with you today is literally, like I was like, today's the day, God. Today's the day. Like I've been waiting for this moment. So I'm excited.
Well, good. I'm excited as well.
So one thing that I wanted to highlight a lot in this season is my theme is called A Diamond in the Making. And we all know before a diamond becomes a diamond, it kind of goes through the refining process, the fire, the shaping up, and out of that comes this beautiful diamond that every girl drools over. And when I look at you, I think about that. Like we mentioned your age today. I don't want to mention it to the crowd. And I looked at you, I was like, there's no way she's that age. There's no way. She has this amazing grace. Like if I can just touch the hem, I can get a little grace in my life too. So I think your story, I feel like if I or anybody were going through what you're going through, they probably won't be where you're at today. So for you to be here, smiling, glowing, and as beautiful as ever, even though you've been through, you know, the worst of the worst, I find that to be a diamond in the making. So I definitely have to have you here.
I'm listening to you. I'm like, who's she talking about?
I'm talking about you, like this wonderful woman. So before we even get into nitpicks of your story, I want you to tell me a little bit more about yourself.
Okay. Well, I was born in a little town in Texas called Waco, Texas. I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters. My mother, we come from a huge family. My mother had 17 brothers and sisters. And when I grew up, I guess the thing that sticks to my mind the most is my mother telling me what happened when I was younger. I was about maybe 6 months to a year, or maybe less than 2 years, because I still had a bottle. So she was a hardworking woman. She worked 2 jobs, and there were times that we were left at home with a babysitter. And so she decided this time that she was going to leave us with a friend of hers. And I don't think she really knew everything about this woman because what had happened. So she left us, and she was working a 3rd shift job, and she left us at home. I was still drinking the bottle. I can't remember if I was 6 months, a year. It was, but I was young. And she said that she left me in the care of this woman, and when she got a phone call from her job telling her to meet her at the hospital because her baby went into convulsions, which was me. And what had happened is that her friend that she left in charge of us, all 5 of us, had put milk, instead of milk in my bottle, I guess they ran out of milk, and she decided that she would put some alcohol in my bottle.
Gave you alcohol?
Gave me alcohol. And I went into convulsions. You had to rush me to the hospital. When Mom got there, she said things were looking really bad. You know, I turned blue. It was just an awful thing for my mom to even go through. But that wasn't even the worst of it. I think it was maybe 6 months or a year later. My brother, I'll take that back. So that was 6 months. So what happened at 2 years old is when my brother had forgot to feed the cat. And I don't like cats to this day because of this story that my mom told me. I don't know. Anyway, but my brother forgot to feed the cat, and put me to bed, with my bottle, whatever I was drinking at that time. I doubt it was milk, whatever it was. And my brother forgot to feed the cat, and the cat jumped up on the bed and started licking the whatever it was out of my mouth. And in the time that he was doing that, the cat's mouth was bigger than, because it was a tomcat, so it covered my nose when he was licking. So I stopped breathing. That's when I turned blue, and literally blue. And they rushed me to the hospital, and told my mom, if she makes it, she's probably gonna be an invalid. She won't be able to talk, won't be able to walk. She won't do any of these things. And I had a praying mom. She definitely believed in prayer. That's where I get it from. And things were. I can remember her words were, she was crying at that time. She said, I didn't think I was going to have a baby again, because they was telling me that my baby was going to die. And I'm like, wow, that's crazy. And so I didn't speak until I was 4 because of this incident with the cat. And I remember my mom also used to do hair on the side. She was a neighborhood beautician. And she did pretty good. So people would come over. She fixed their hair, and while she was there, but before that, my mother decided that she wanted a piano in the house. Nobody played, but she just always wanted a piano in the house. And so since she worked at the school, the principal was getting rid of some of the old pianos and decided my mom asked him for one. And so he said, sure, you can have one. So the first one that he gave her fell off the truck. So he didn't make it. I guess they weren't holding it right. So he said, I got another one. You come get this one. So they made sure that one made it home. Made it home, and as nobody played. But my mother was a singer. She loved music, and didn't know. I just believe that God orders your steps. He really does. And so this was at the age of 3.5 that this happened. Not 4. It was 3.5. So my mother said she was doing hair, and all of a sudden she turned the radio off. And she heard this music. She said, where's this music coming from? And she was looking and said, I know I turned this radio off. What is going on? And she came into the living room where the piano was, and there I was playing the song that had just played, and it was called Blue Moon. And Blue Moon, I see you standing in the rain. It's an old song. Maybe you don't even know about that, but you don't. But that was the song, and that was the beginning of me playing. It's something I cannot even, I can't explain it to this day. That's how I practice. I will hear something and I go right to the piano and it just comes out.
And I want to emphasize more on the fact that this is a gift from God.
Absolutely.
Like, there's no way a 3.5-year-old can hear a song, go to the piano and start playing it exactly like.
Exactly. It wasn't exact, but it was enough that she knew what I was playing.
It was music.
Absolutely.
Like, that's a gift from God.
Absolutely.
I want to emphasize on that.
Absolutely a gift from God. At the age of 7, I was playing for my church choir, for the young. Well, we called them children's buds, whatever, like that, whatever. And I was pretty decent. Matter of fact, I thank God now for the pastor who recognized my gift. Because, I would just go out after church and just play on the piano. And one day the pastor came out and said, who's that playing? And he's like, oh my God. He said, that's Jackie. And so he started paying me. That was my first job. At the age of 7, I was getting $10 a week. So I was making big money. For me, all I wanted was a bag of chips and a moon cookies. You ever heard of moon cookies? They're real big.
It sounds familiar, like really big cookies?
Big cookies, yeah.
Okay.
We call them moon cookies. Yeah. And a bottle of Red Pop. That's all I wanted. I gave the rest to my mom.
You sound like a richer 7-year-old out there.
Rich. And so every year from there, I continued to play, for that choir up until I graduated. I remember being 13, all that. And they used to give me an appreciation service when I turned 13. That's when they started that. They would have, my daddy and I would walk down the aisle together, and the whole service was about me. And they would give me money, I was like rich, real rich, yeah. But that was, and my mother, she sang in the choir. So we had a great relationship because our connection was way more connected than my brothers and sisters because they didn't have the gift.
Okay.
They sang. My sister sang a little bit, but nobody had the gift. You know what I'm saying? My sister played clarinet. My brother maybe played drums or something, but it wasn't until the fact that we know that this is from God, definitely from God. Because to this day, like I say, I still listen to the music, and I have a piano in my head. That's all I can explain it. I see the notes. I'm like, okay, that's that note, whatever, and then I come out and just play it. It's crazy, but that's what happens.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I want you to give me one word that describes your childhood.
Rough.
Why would you say rough?
Mainly because we were poor. So my mother had 5 kids, and I knew who I have a different father than my sisters and brothers, and they all had the same father, and he wasn't around my stepfather, even though he's on my birth certificate as my father, because he was still married to my mother when my mother and my father got together and produced me. But my father never. To this day, I loved him to death, because I believe that's where my gift came from, his line, because he played piano, his sisters played piano. I do believe that that's where the line come from, but strictly from God. But he never thought enough of me to give me his last name. So my last name is Hall, which was my stepfather's name. And especially after what you hear in a few minutes, I really wanted that name changed. At the age of 18, because that's what happened. My stepfather was not in the house. He had started living on his own. I don't know what happened to him and my mother. They fought a lot. Oh, I just don't remember that. They fought a lot, and so she finally left him, and took the kids, and we had to fight him to even give child support. But because I was legally his father, I was legally his daughter, he had to pay for me as well. Back then, I remember it was only $30 a week for 5 kids. And if we didn't get to his house on Friday at 5 o'clock, when we knew he would be home and get paid, we wouldn't get it, because he would give it out to whatever woman he was dealing with that week. So she would make us walk. I remember she would, and he would live around like 2 blocks from him. Everybody. So she would make us. I remember it would make us go to the house to get the money. Even thinking about that now, like kids shouldn't even be involved in grown folks stuff. But we didn't think of it. We go over to the house with my older sister, my brothers. We all walked there and walked back and give Mama the money. But it was $30, and that's all it was. And I remember.
Hi, so sorry to interrupt you, but I wanted to let you know that this episode is sponsored by Gliya Huyel. Gliya Huyel is an independent-owned company that sells hairline and skin line products. Everything they use in the products and ingredients is 100% organic. You can definitely hit them up and contact them at www.gliyahuyel.com. I'll leave the link down below. If you'd like to gift anybody or to just have it for an event, you can definitely hit them up and say, hi, I would like to buy a Gliya Huyel skin line or hairline product. Now let's get back to the video.
Wow. I remember him telling us that he shouldn't give us nothing. You don't live with me. Y'all grown now. I'm 12, maybe 12. But he didn't want to give us anything. And I remember he would give, and he had this woman, which we thought was a prostitute, and I think she still was a prostitute. But she started living with him, and he really started. He got sick, and this is where I saw the grace of God in my mother. He got sick, didn't have anything. The woman left him in the house, and he was almost to death. My mother nursed him back to health. Yeah. Ooh, Jesus, she nursed him back to health. I remember this, and he didn't have a job. He quit his job. He was older. He had quit his job. Didn't have Social Security. Didn't have nothing, and had been like that for years. I remember my mother helped him get his license back. He had to go like 2 hours away to get a birth certificate because he didn't know how to do none of that. And by that time, they gave him back money, back pay, for not being on Social Security for so long. And he promised my mother that once he got his money, that he was going to take care of us. That never happened. When he got his money, he went and got another woman, moved into her house, bought her a whole house full of furniture, bought him, back then it was a souped up Monte Carlo. That was the car. The car was really a nice car for young people, and my brothers loved that car. And there were times, and so, and that hurt my mother. I saw the hurt on her. Oh, she was so hurt. That he still through all this, where was this woman when you needed help? But anyway, and I remember going over to his house to get the car, because he wouldn't let his other kids borrow the car, but he would let me. They always put me up to doing something. I was the youngest, and he never would tell me no, but he would tell them no in a minute. And by the time I turned to 18, it was the same way. I was getting ready to graduate from high school, about to go to college. I was 17. I hadn't turned 18 yet. I turned 18 that summer. And I was getting ready to go to California because I was going to Long Beach State University. And we would always, every time I would get the car, I would bring it back to him on Monday morning. And he would get up and follow me, ride with me, take me back home, and then he would have his car for the week. It was like that for months. This particular day, I guess he said I was grown, I don't know. But this particular day, I went to the house and he told me to come in. I'm like, okay, no big deal. I've been in there before, with his lady. We beginning to know her. Didn't dislike her. Didn't like her, but didn't dislike her. And you go in the house and and it's laid. She got all the nice furniture and stuff, and we used to have to go home to our little abode, but it is what it was. We had a lot of love, my mom, but anyway, when I got to the house and he told me to come in, when I walked in, he said, come on to the back room. That didn't faze me at all. I did that. And I'm like, okay. So I go back there, and this man is sitting in his chair next to his bed, butt naked. And he said, come over here. I'm like, come over? I'm like, come for what? I said, get some clothes on. What's wrong with you? I mean, I'm devastated. This is the man that I call Daddy. And he chased me around the house.
Where was the lady?
She wasn't there. She must have been at work or something. But I didn't see her car either. But I guess it didn't. Anyway, maybe if I didn't see her car, maybe I wouldn't have went in. But because I know this man.
That's your daddy.
Yeah. I mean, and when he tried to chase me around the house, and he almost caught me. And I knew if he caught me, something bad was going to happen. I knew that. I mean, I'm crying and telling him, like, what are you doing? Stop doing this. Why are you chasing me? And he said, well, you did it when you were little. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, what? And that messed with my brain. I'm like, this is crazy. And I finally got to one side of the room, and he was like coming. I got to a spot where I couldn't move, and without going toward him. And I remember it was a lamp stand or something. It was something hard. I picked it up and tried to knock the crap out of him. I didn't know if the man was dead or not. I didn't care. I ran out the house, got back in the car. The key was still in the car, so got back in the car. Thank God I still have those keys. Got back in the car, drove back home to my mom. I'm devastated. I'm supposed to leave, go to college that next day. And I get to the house, and my mom was like, what's wrong? I'm crying, trying to tell her, what happened. And she said, Jackie, what happened? She's like, I said, what happened? I'm like, he tried. She said, who tried? She said, your daddy, who? I said, Luther. She said, oh my God, not again. I'm like, what are you talking about? Not again. I'm like, what are you talking about? Mama, what you talking about? And she's like, no. Don't tell your daddy. Please don't tell your daddy, my real father. Because by that time, me and my real father had a great relationship, even though he didn't wouldn't give me his name, but I knew him. And and so I'm like, what you mean don't tell him? I said, I gotta tell Daddy. This man tried to molest me. And she said, don't tell your daddy. You don't want your daddy in jail, do you? I'm like, no, but I can't let this go. She said, Jackie, you're gonna have to. I'm like, what you mean I'm gonna have to? I don't want to let this go. This is crazy, Mama. Come on now. So she finally, I said, what happened when I was little? Because he said it.
He said it and she said it.
He said that, and you just said it. And she said, when you were 3 years old, he molested you. I said, are you kidding me? Now it brings me back to, I forgot a part, it brings me back to when I was 16 and I had cancer.
Yeah, I remember reading on your book and I was like, what?
So I'm like, I'm 16 years old with cancer, and told my mom, they had told my mother.
Cervical cancer, I believe.
Cervical cancer, and I remember I'm telling my mom that if I didn't have the surgery, I was going to die, and even if I had the surgery, I still may die, because most women don't survive cervical cancer, especially the way mine was. I had one tumor the size of a grapefruit, and the other one the size of a baseball, and had been there for a minute. I used to have bad menstrual pain. I mean, it was bad. I mean, I would be out like for the whole month. I couldn't go to school. It was horrible. And so when she told me that it happened at 3, and I'm wondering why because my life was always back and forth in the hospital. You know, I had this problem and that problem and I remember having problems with my uterus at 7. Just remember that. At 7 years old, I'm like, I'm having a problem with my uterus. So all this stuff started coming back. I said, so this man, she said, Jackie, I didn't know it happened till I got home. So she said, you were laying in the bed, blood everywhere. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I said, what happened to this man? Said, nothing happened to him. I said, you didn't call the cops? She said,
So nobody?
Didn't tell nobody. She didn't tell nobody. So the next day, I mean, that night, it was just horrifying just to hear all this. And I'm trying to understand why my mom, the woman that birthed me, that I know loves me, has never stood up for me. That's the way I felt. I really felt that way. I mean, I hated her, but I loved her. And I remember going away that next day to college, and I'm like, how am I going to go to college and dealing with all this? I might as well just stay here.
Across the country, too.
Across the country, right. And I get to California, you know, she had told my sister about it. I think my sister I don't know if my sister was upset with me or not, but I felt like she was. I felt like everybody was just looking at me. I felt dirty. You know, what could I have done differently, you know? And so yeah, that was my childhood.
So while you were speaking, I was like, there's a light, there's a light, there's a light, there's a light. Like, it's a lot of darkness, but I'm pretty sure there's some moments where there was a light. So I want you to, you don't have to, but yeah, I want to hear the good parts of your childhood too, like the moments where you're like, oh, God got me.
The time that I remember that I know that God got me was when I had cancer. And having to go to school. I had lost my hair because I had to go through chemo. And the friends that I thought were my friends, they didn't come around. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know what to say. My boyfriend of a whole 2 years stopped talking to me. I'm trying to find the light. I really am. I'm trying to find it. I think the best thing that I could say as far as light was me being a part of the band. That gave me something of my own. I played first year clarinet for 4 years. But I think the only thing that I can think of was that I know is when I got a relationship with my God and Savior when I was 16. Okay. I told God I don't want to die. I'm too young to die. But to be told at 16 that you can't have kids because they had to take both ovaries and your uterus. And I didn't understand that at first until my cousin, who was a nurse, explained it to me. She said, Jackie, they tried to keep it, but there was bone fragments inside of your uterus that they couldn't explain. And they had to take it out. There was no way. In order for you to live, that had to happen. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding, because I have nieces and nephews that I love today. I have loved kids all my life. I mean, I babysat them, you know, I was the fun aunt, you know. I guess that was the life my nieces and nephews have always been. I have one niece to this day, she's 45, and we're like closer to close. We grew up like sisters, and to this day we're closer than my sister at times, and that was my light then.
Okay, yeah. That eases me.
It wasn't much, but it was
it was something.
Yeah.
So let's now transition to teenage Jackie. You're now at California for college. How was college life for you?
College life was different because at Long Beach State there was 3 black people in my whole class.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes.
At that time too. Wow. Okay.
But it was good though. I never experienced anything living on my own. My sister and I lived with my sister for a minute. Being in California, I started going to a Kojic church. Church of God in Christ. We call it Kojic. And the pastor there was amazing. He didn't know me from Adam. And I walked into his church, sat on the second or third row. That was the only seat to, to sit in. I sat there. And from the pulpit, he called me. He said, "You get to the piano." I'm like,
you didn't even know you play piano, nothing. Interesting.
I love it. What kind of shenanigans is this? I thought somebody told him. Somebody should have had to tell him. But he said, "There's something about you. There's a glow on you that nobody else sees. You haven't seen it." I'm like, "Get out of here. This is crazy." I started playing for that church. From that day, I started playing for that church. And then I remember a young guy there that liked me, but I didn't really like him like that. Because he was a big dude, he was like...
It wasn't your type?
No, it wasn't my type at all. But he was real nice. He was a sweetheart. But it just wasn't my type, because I thought I had a type, but that wasn't it. But he was real... I was just I had finished college, and I felt so alone there. My sister and I had fell out. So I moved out to my own apartment with 3 other women, and you can imagine that, three other college students living in Long Beach, California, and we go outside our kitchen door and it's sand, because it's the beach. So I'm living the life of Raleigh, but it wasn't. I didn't know those ladies, and they didn't have my back. I didn't know them, I landed a great job there at Edgington Oil Company, and I forget it. They gave me a car to drive. And back then, was 22. I had landed a great job, paying good money, but I just was not. I missed my mama. I didn't miss Waco, but I wish I could have put them two together, so I had to go back home. And that's when, maybe if I stayed there, I never would have met this other person that ruined part of my life. Yeah.
I don't want to say this is like the highlight, but this is my favorite part of your story, because I feel like that has made you who you are today. Like,
Absolutely.
a lot of things happened in your childhood you didn't even know, and it shaped you, of course.
Yeah.
But this part of the story we're about to talk about, like, I think it's a part where it's like the paramount of your story, because it made you who you are today and why you do what you do today.
Absolutely.
So we're going to go in very detail about this one.
All right.
So now we're back in Waco.
We're back in Waco.
Waco, and you're school like Long Beach, you left California behind, you left the sun behind.
Yeah.
Texas, there's still sun.
Yeah.
But you came back because of your mama. How was life there?
Well, I knew then, because once you go to a big city, then you come back to a very small.
Everything seems so miniature.
I was like, oh, this is horrible. So I started back. It felt like I never left. But like everything was as I left it. And that part to me was very sad.
How many years were you apart?
4.5, almost 5 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And it was still the same. Okay.
It was the same. To me, it was the same. Like nobody had grown. Everybody was still doing the same. You still see the same winos on the street, But so I started back playing for the church again, and I felt like I'm stuck here. I can never leave this place. And I was just trying to get out. But I remember being a very young teenage girl, and I had a pastor friend. Was a pastor, and I was playing the piano, whatever. And he looked over at me when I finished playing. He said, "You're going to make a great preacher's wife." And from him, he said it. I have other preachers that said it, so that's what it's stuck in my mind. I wanted to get married. I wanted to get married and leave my mama's house. So when I get back home, we have this thing called Fellowship of Churches. My church that I belonged to in Waco, another church in Killeen, Texas, and another church in Waco, which was church that my father attended. We always fellowship together once a month. So this particular time, we had to go to my father's church. So I went there. My choir sang, I played, and this church from Killeen, Texas was there. And they had this gentleman that was directing, and he was very animated when he directed. I mean, he was all over the place. And I'm like, ooh, he make you, he drew attention, make you, So my eyes went directly to him. I didn't know he was a preacher then, but then when he finished directing his choir, he sat in the pulpit. I'm like, oh, he's a preacher. Ding, 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 ding.
You're a preacher's wife.
There you
must
go.
Be it.
Must be the one. And I remember they had dinner on the ground, basically. They would have dinner outside for everybody. They call it DOG, dinner on the ground. And so after church was over, I made my way outside. I wanted to make sure, he saw who I was. Absolutely. And so we knew that next month we were going to see each other again, because it was every month we fellowship, but it just traveled from church to church. So the next month it was at his church in Killeen, Texas. So I knew I was going to see him again. I mean, we exchanged names. He knew my name was Jackie. I knew his name was Robert. I'm not, okay, I knew his name was Robert. And so the next time I saw him, trust you, I went and got my hair done.
Girl.
I got my new outfit, make sure I was lost and ready to go. And so, again, dinner on the ground afterwards. The whole time during service, I saw him watching me. So I act like I didn't see him, but I'm looking at him, he's looking at me. There was another guy that my friends, we also, it was like the Three Musketeers. Wherever I went, they went. So she was liking this other guy, and they were friends. So during church, I wrote down my name and my number. I didn't have a card back then. I wasn't that fancy, but gave my card, and I handed it to him. And he's like, oh, he said, oh, you got it all together. He said, okay, I'm gonna call you. So later on that night, he called, and he was in the military. I found a little bit about him. He's in the military, and very well put together, statuesque. He's 6'4", maybe he was slim, maybe 100, maybe 220, maybe. But he was, nice. He was okay on that. He looked okay. He wasn't handsome. He wasn't Denzel, but he wasn't too bad. He wasn't too bad. Not too bad. And we talked, but at the time I didn't tell him I was living with a guy. Got that part. I was living with a young man that his name was Robert as well.
Okay.
Yeah. But the Robert that I was living with was sweet. I've known him all my life, and he was just somebody to get out the house with. See what I'm saying? I just wanted to get out of the house, so I knew he liked me, and I didn't dislike him, and I was a virgin. So that's where I lost my virginity to him. I feel like, well, it's like everybody was doing. Everybody was living together at that time. So
That's a normal thing.
Yeah, normal thing. So we moved in together, but he didn't know that I was liking this other guy. And when I met this one, when we finally exchanged phone numbers and all that stuff, we started talking pretty heavily. 6 months. He told me on our first date that God told him that we're supposed to get married.
So you're being called preacher's wife. He's a preacher. He's telling you y'all was supposed to get married. It seems like the stars are aligning.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I did. 6 months later, we're at the Justice of the Peace. Okay, so I've always wanted to have a church wedding, but the pastor that I wanted to marry us didn't want to marry us in Killeen. He wanted to have it in Waco. I couldn't afford to have two